understanding that friction is good and it helps us both to see different sides of the table, and being able to negotiate to come to a good place for both teams or both leaders is immensely important.
Welcome to the Leadership Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Swan, Principal Consultant with Peridot Circle Consulting. In this podcast, we explore personal leadership journeys and transformations with impactful, innovative, and talented leaders. Leading the interview today is Linda Linfield, Founder and Principal Consultant with Peridot Circle Consulting. Linda specializes in executive leadership and leadership team development. With decades of high-level leadership coaching, Linda helps leaders and aspiring leaders extend their wisdom to achieve career breakthroughs at the top levels of organizations. We have the pleasure today to talk with Christina Belknap. Christina Belknap is a prominent figure in the field of cybersecurity, currently serving as the Senior Vice President and Chief Security Officer at Silac Insurance. Her career path is marked by a shift from education and technical training to a keen interest in technology, especially in security. She is known for her approach to work, which involves a balance of serious commitment to cybersecurity and promoting a positive, engaging work environment. Christina's guiding principle is to be a force for good, focusing on helping people achieve their potential. This ethos is reflected in her leadership style, where she emphasizes the importance of mentorship, especially for those at the start of their careers. She advocates for pushing boundaries and seeking growth opportunities, highlighting the value of learning from experience and mentoring. Christina is a founder and board member of Women in Cybersecurity Utah, a platform that addresses the underrepresentation of women in the security field and provides support and resources for women in the industry. Overall, Christina Belknap's career and contributions reflect a blend of technical expertise, leadership, advocacy for diversity and inclusion, and a commitment to continuous learning and improvement in the field of cybersecurity. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you.
Christina, I'm so excited you could join us today for this podcast. I've really been looking forward ever since you said you would do it. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I am very excited for this because, as you know, I really enjoy our relationship and what you brought into my world.
Yeah, thank you. So, when we first started working together, really started working together, you'd been identified as one of the top 16 people in your entire organization. And it was part of the succession planning process that your organization undertook. And what they were trying to do was to identify the people they thought could grow to become VPs or senior VPs or even executives at a higher level in the organization. So they put together this program. You were one of that group. Their philosophy was to invest in developing leaders. I'm curious, when you had that opportunity, what was on your mind? What did you expect? And what came out of it for you?
So that was a very interesting time for me. I had recently been moved from the position I had in IT security, into the actual security team when we had brought in a new CSO, actually, and I wasn't thrilled. So my new leader was someone who was difficult to work with and who I had not had a good experience with up to that point, and I was the only one in security who was tapped for this particular program. And I was actually at that time starting to send out resumes and look for another position. And when I found out about this, and I talked to you actually, and you talked to me about the fact that this was an opportunity for me that I was giving up, not, this wasn't going to affect anybody but me if I walked away. It changed my mindset as to what I wanted and how I could contribute and what I should do, into a way of, I'm not being picked on or moved around, or I'm actually being set up for success. This program changed my philosophy at that firm as to what I could and could not achieve. And it was amazing for me.
When we were talking just before we got on camera, you were telling me about this, that you were reminding me that you were right in that fragile point of almost leaving your job and looking for something else because, you didn't really like the leader you were reporting to. And at the time you believed that having a leader who was good to you, who subscribed to your own leadership philosophies, basically, was important. And in that moment, you decided, no, I'm going to learn through this. and I'm going to become more of who I could become, right? So that's
Exactly.
it really underscores for me just the kind of person you are. Because I actually remember the first time you and I met, and you were in a management position at the time, working for a leader who I came to know very well. And he introduced me to you as his newest hire. He was so proud. His buttons were bursting, and he said, like, this is Christina, and she is awesome, and she's going to do great things here. My first impression of you was of your positive energy. You came across in that initial meeting as capable and smart and really earnest to make a difference. And then later, as we worked together to prepare you for your successive leadership opportunities, we've really concentrated on like taking that energy, that positive energy, and giving you more gravitas, like more weight, a more serious demeanor. That wasn't an easy transition for you, Christina, right?
It wasn't. No.
Yeah, and a lot of leaders we work with are concerned when they get feedback like that. Like, you're really great, but change, right? You're really great, but except for this, please change. And can you kind of share with us your thought process of receiving that feedback and what you did to stay a whole person, stay who you really are while evolving to the leader you have become?
So, we all have areas of growth. There's nobody who's perfect, and you wouldn't want to be perfect anyway, because then nobody would want to hang out with you. But but it's never easy to hear those areas of growth pointed out to you. I mean, it's always a struggle. But one of the things that I firmly believe in is I can't help other people to take those things and grow with them if I can't take those and grow within myself. So what I did, and I did hear that, I do tend to be a positive person. I do tend to see the good, but I also took that in and said, okay, so how can I incorporate some of this feedback in a way that isn't disingenuous to myself, but also helps me to grow? So I really truly believe that if you are on a constant growth pattern, that what feels disingenuous to you today might not tomorrow, because you're growing and you're adding layers and you're uncovering layers, and you're really getting to a point where you can take the information that you have. And I think it's also important for when you get this information that you take it as it was intended. Not, you are a horrible person who probably doesn't deserve to be in this role, but hey, we love having you here, and this will get you farther. If you take that, this will get you farther. This will help you to do better. Every time you hear things, it's a lot easier, but still hard to change. But to add that on, if you listen to that and you take that in, that somebody is trying to help you, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. So what were some of the things you did, Christina, to show up with more weight, with more gravitas? That's a challenge for many, many leaders we coach. What did you personally do? And were you able to get feedback along the way that you were making progress?
So I learned to not speak. One of the things that a lot of leaders and or just everybody does is when there's a silence, we want to fill it. So we'll add in more words. We'll add in. I learned to not do that, to wait, to say my piece, and then to be okay with that. I learned to not speak as fast. Growing up, and as an adult, I taught debate, and I did debate. And one of the things, you have to get a lot of information out really fast. So you talk really fast. That doesn't make you executive or give you gravitas or make you commanding when you come into a room. So I learned to slow down, although sometimes I do still talk too fast. I did learn to slow down, to take my time. And one of the most important things that I think that nobody told me, but I think helped me, was to listen, not to respond, but to hear. So to take your time to hear what somebody else is saying, to let it process, and then to respond, not to, have your response already to go and you're only waiting for the break to say something, but to actually hear and then respond also comes across as having the ability to function in an executive at an executive level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really
the other thing I did that I think is very important is I worked with coaches. I got mentors. I asked one of the executives on our team, who was a woman, to help mentor me. How did she talk to the executives on our team? How did she manage to do it? I utilized your services. What do I need to do? And then this was probably the hardest part. I tried not to take any of it personally. I tried not to, I'm doing this wrong, therefore I am a terrible person, or I don't belong here, or I'm not good enough. This is, a stepping stone. This is one of the rungs of the ladders that, I need to climb. If it's not about who you are as a core person, but just as a skill or a tool that you can use to continue, it's a lot easier to take and to move forward with.
You're reminding me of a conversation you and I had not too long ago about some feedback you had. One of your leaders said, Christina, you just need to have thicker skin. And I think it might have been that same leader that said to you that to be a good leader, you needed to be ruthless. Now,
yes, yep.
You're talking about how you listen well, you determine not to take things personally, and you also expressed to me that there are some limits to that. There's so much you want to learn, so much you want to grow from. You really work not to take things personally, but this idea, this metaphor of thicker skin and the metaphor of the picture of ruthlessness you get in your mind, talk to us about that. That's where you drew the line, right?
That was. So in my mind, I need to grow. Everybody needs to grow. We need to continue. But I'm going to grow authentically. I'm not going to try to become something I'm not, or to pretend like things that do affect me don't. So, I need to make sure that I'm finding a solid way to deal with things and to help other people to deal with things. But I'm not going to become a ruthless leader because that's what the expectation is. So what I tried to do at that point was to find what they meant by that, not the words that they're using, but what does it mean to be a ruthless leader in your mind? Does that mean that I hold people accountable? I can authentically hold people accountable for their jobs. Now, am I going to do it in a mean or, no, but authentic accountability is important for everybody's job. So that, if that's what ruthless means, I'm good with that. So understanding the deeper meaning behind what they're trying to imply, even if it doesn't come across in a way that makes sense to me. One of the people that I respect and who has helped me a lot to understand how to be a good executive told me was, I need to go in understanding what these people need. So she told me that if I'm going to have a meeting with this person, I need to know what questions they're going to ask first, what they're going to need, what information they need from me before I go into this meeting. And if I can do that, then they will see me in the way that they need to see me, because I'm showing up for them the way they need to see me. Regardless of how I am or who I am, I need to show up in a way that they can see that I'm listening to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, it was Linda who told me to do that.
Works, doesn't it?
It
really works.
Works better than just about any other. And I counsel all of my people to this day. That's how I coach. What do we need? What do they need from us?
That's so good. That's so good. It's so good to hear you say that and your application of it, and you're extending it to others. The other thing that you mentioned, Christina, was the way you feel about friction. So one of the big stumbling blocks leaders have is sometimes they want to make their leaders happy. They think in terms of, I'm here to serve my leaders, or I'm here to make them happy. And sometimes that just doesn't work, right?
Right.
Happiness gets in the way of progress sometimes, right? It's not that it's wrong to be happy, but talk to us a little bit about that.
So, friction is people are afraid of friction, and people are afraid of going in and confrontation. And to me, confrontation is not necessarily confrontation. Friction is not necessarily friction. In order to do things well, and I think before I used the concept of a muscle, in order to get a muscle to be built, it has to have friction. It has to have something that it's working against. In order to really build good programs and good relationships, there needs to be some friction. If you have even like a marriage where there's no conflict at all, there's no communication happening, because two people cannot live together or work together like that without there being some friction. Understanding that friction is good, and it helps us both to see different sides of the table, and being able to negotiate to come to a good place for both teams or both leaders is immensely important. So helping my leaders to understand that we're not looking for a frictionless existence here. We're not looking to not have friction even within the team. We're looking for positive friction that helps us to understand what is happening and moving forward. We're not looking to be nasty. We're not looking to try to hurt people. What we're looking for is to get the most ideas out there, and they don't have to only fit our ideas, but the best ideas out there, so that we can see and maneuver and come to the best conclusion. And you can't do that without friction. So
Yeah,
understanding
that's
that
true.
friction is positive and good and will help us as long as we do it right. We're not being nasty or mean about it. Friction is only thing that's going to get us where we really need to go.
And without friction, there's no need for leadership, right?
Exactly.
Real progress is made and real ground is taken when
Yes.
you have to remove obstacles. And when
Yes.
there's an obstacle, there's always friction. So I want to do a little deeper dive into the ruthlessness idea as well. I think the ruthless feedback for you came up in relationship to how you manage your leaders and being really the expectation was for you to be harsher and more demanding and to write people off more quickly. That sort of environment was what you were encouraged to engage in, right?
I was told also that too many people liked me, that in order to be a good executive, I needed to have more people not liking me because I was, as we were talking about, hindering the way that they needed to move forward or hindering these things. And so in order to be good at my job, I needed to make sure people didn't like me. My boss was not hearing enough complaints about me.
Interesting. So what's your philosophy about that? Tell us a little bit more. Like, how do you...
My philosophy about that is, again, I am very much believe in the relational leadership. I develop relationships with people, and it doesn't mean that we're best friends, but it means that I understand, again, where they're coming from, what they need, how they are thinking, so that we can come together. I assume, and this might be condescending of me, but I assume that most people don't understand where I'm coming from. So in order for, security is a different world for most people in business. So I don't expect them to understand that as well. So my understanding what their needs are can help me to then help them to understand what my needs are, so that we can come together as a unit. I believe that unless you have the ability for your teams to be one unit, you're never going to achieve what you could achieve. Now you can achieve a lot, but you'll never get to the greatness that you need if you have the siloed teams. And so although what my area is a new area, and somebody in let's say customer service, because finance is already, they understand security a little bit better, but customer service doesn't understand why I'm saying you can't give these people information. You can't, somebody calls in, you have to be very careful to make sure they're and it feels rude almost to say, hey, you have to give me this information, and if you don't, I can't tell you what you need to know. So helping them to understand how security can fit into customer service and support in a way that makes both teams more capable of doing what they need to do is really tough. And so I go in trying to understand what they're trying to achieve, what they need, how what this is actually affecting their jobs, so that we can come together and say, let me explain to you why we're doing this. Let me help you to understand how this will in the end help your team to do a better job. That is what I think is most important in building and leadership. Now, I do that with my teams as well. I expect when I hire somebody, I expect them to be smarter than me in what they're doing. So if I hire a cloud security expert, I expect that they're this me, and I will go to them for information. My job is to make sure that they have what they need to do their jobs. I sometimes have to come to them and say, hey, you know what? I know as much as you or more. And that means that we have a dichotomy here where the leader shouldn't be in that role. So how can I help you get to where you need to be? And if I can't, how can I get you to a place where you understand that this is not going to be a good role for you? And I try to do that in a way that helps them to understand that their career is not going to be helped by staying in a role where they're not succeeding. And let's look at how we can get you to maybe to a different role or to a different place where this isn't, or how can we get you to a place where this is going to be a role that's going to be successful for you? But a lot of times, and I know that a lot of companies do this, we promote based on, particularly in technology, you are a great technologist and now you're a manager. And we don't ever give them the ability to grow into being a manager. We just take our high performers and we put them into an entirely different role that requires entirely different skills. And then we expect them to succeed without giving them the tools that they need in order to do that. And so for me, the need to be ruthless and get rid of people who we've done that to does not make sense to me. We put them in this role. Let's give them all the tools they need to be successful. And then if they can't be successful, we move them out. That's not always the case.
You know, that reflects back on the first thing we were talking about on this podcast, right? Where you were talking about how you were going to exit the company because you weren't getting what you needed from your leader.
Yes.
And over the course of the HIPO program, you started to get what you needed, and you started to elevate your own game. You know, it's at those transition points in our career where we really do need support. It doesn't mean we're failing. It means that we need our mindset to be shifted, our decision making skills to be elevated, our understanding of what's required at that new level to be augmented. And you were able to get that through coaching, through a leadership program, through finding mentors inside your organization and outside your organization. And since that time, like, you have led through so many cataclysmic events. I'll call them cataclysmic events, right? Mergers, acquisitions, leadership turnover, organizational cultural change. I mean, extreme cultural change, not just a little bit. And lots of competition for over technical imperatives, and which of the technical imperatives were more imperative. You've had to lead teams, cross-functional teams, and your own team through those situations. A lot of your success and a lot of good leadership has to do with your personal mindset, beliefs, decisions. Tell us about one of those situations, Christino, that was really tough for you, and tough for your team and tough for the leaders, but you were able to lead your team through it because of your beliefs and your decision-making capability. You know, the relationship between beliefs and decisions is so strong. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So we talked about a couple of things part of this call, and I'm going to go in just a little different direction this time. I came into the company I'm in now 4.5 months ago, and I came in as the CSO. There was already a CISO here, but the company, the firm, had lost its trust in this individual. This individual had been at this company for several years and was moved into security without having any other ability to move forward. So I came in, and coming into this, we had a lot of things that the culture was not in a good place when I came in. There was a lot of morale issues. There was a lot of feeling like if I ask a question, if I give information, my job will be in jeopardy. And that wasn't just from the leaders. It was all the way down to all of the engineers and all of the analysts who were afraid to say anything or do anything that was different. And that was a lot because of leadership. So when I went in, I let everybody know the first 90 days here, I'm going to just be exploring and investigating. I will not make any changes until I understand what it is, where things are. So for the first 90 days, I talked to people, and it was really interesting. I didn't just talk to my VPs or my directors. I talked to mostly individual contributors. How are you doing? Where are your pain points? Where can we make a difference? And it really surprised me of how many of them were looking. They were out there. They didn't want to be here anymore. And the problem is that we have what is known as a command and control culture. They were not allowed to do their work without first asking somebody else if they could do their work. They were not allowed to make decisions. Even engineers who are creating code couldn't create code without somebody saying, yes, you can create this code. They couldn't fix errors that they knew were there, bugs. They couldn't do that without somebody saying, yes, you can create that. And it was very frustrating for them. So I went through and I tried, and then we had a big on-site for everybody in January. I started in October, and in January, I brought everybody into town. We all got together. And right before we had this, we sent out everybody, and you may approve of this, Linda. We sent everybody the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And we talked about how the company had done this huge amount of growth and had moved forward and done all this work. And everybody had come together and done everything that had to happen. It didn't matter what your role was. You just stepped in and did it. And that got us to this great place where we're on the brink of doing something great. But that work is no longer going to get us to where we need to go. So even though some people may be let go and some people may be changing, what they did was important for us. And what they did got us here. But their style of leadership was no longer going to be what was going to work for us going forward. So at that point, everybody had read that. We brought it in together, and then we did. 3 of our leaders out of 5 were let go. And we talked about the fact that I am going to be in here working with the leaders now. We're changing the culture. We're changing the mindset. We're changing how we do things, because it's important to everybody here that you know that you are an important part of this, that you need to move forward. And I've had some pushback from leadership, but I've also had lack of pushback, or lean in, maybe instead of pushback, lean in from other leadership. So making sure that everybody understands that we are part of the business. We're not just the technology team. We're business people who are helped to develop a product for the business to rely on. The business sales can't be made if we're not producing what we need to produce. Marketing can't happen if we're not producing what we need to produce. So we need to be as understanding of the business to know what the business does and how it works. And when I got in and asked, my team knows that. They know what the annuities are that we're selling. They know how to, and they're very, very, very want to make it better, want to do things better, but they have to be allowed to. So making sure, that the people understand that even if we're making big changes, and there were big changes made here, one of the people who was let go, he had brought in 7 people from his last position that he had brought to the team. And so everyone assumed that they would leave immediately when he did. But I worked hard to let them know that this is the direction we're going, and this is why things have changed. Nothing negative about the gentleman who left. He works better in a different environment than what we have here. And all of them stayed. So it's just good to know that, if you do it in a way that people feel heard and they can ask questions and they can point out pain points, it goes a lot better than if you just try to go in and do it all yourself and make sure that nobody's going to feel pain because I'm telling them they're not feeling pain. That's not real.
So Christina, I love that story. I mean, it's a long story about lots of nuances, right? It's what I mean long, I mean complex story of all the factors that you're weighing and figuring out over the course of 90 days, and then quickly taking action to align the team to actually accomplish what the business needs you to accomplish. And so on the one hand, if we're to think of it a little more simply, on the one hand, you are paying rapt attention to what the business needs from your team. One of the things that you learned through your leadership development was that the next thing for a VP or a SVP is you have to be primarily a business leader. Yes, you're a functional leader, but you have to understand the whole business in order for you to be effective in your role.
Absolutely.
And that comes through loud and clear in the experience you just shared with us. Secondly, so you're attending to the business as a leader of the business, and you're also attending to the people as a leader of people. And you let some very senior leaders go.
I did.
Because they weren't a good fit. And that's interesting, Christina. That's interesting because I know, on the one hand, you said you're not ruthless, and I know that. I know you're not ruthless. On the other hand, you let several people go who'd been entrenched, right?
Yeah.
And so talk to us a little bit about that, about when do you let people go? A lot of leaders struggle with that. They want to save. They want to save people. They want to help them. They want to encourage them. They don't want to hurt them. You have a particular philosophy about this.
I do. And one of the things the CISO who was here when I came in, he and I started having conversations and we started talking. And within about a month, he came to me and said, I'm feeling like senior leadership does not respect me. And I wanted to talk to you about that. Can you tell me if that's true? And I said, as a matter of fact, it is true. And here are the issues that they have. And here's what's happening. So you and I need to come to a conclusion as to how to beat this, how to get your brand back to where it needs to be, or how to get you to a place where you're happy. And so we went over, and he did this on a Friday. We went over a bunch of things. I said, I can move you to a different position. We can do, how is it going to work? And he came back on Monday and said, I've thought it over. I've heard what you've said. And I think the best thing that could happen right now is if you were to let me go. Then I can move on. I feel comfortable that my team will be taken care of by you, that you're not going to, to ransack my team, that you will make sure that they're okay. And I can move on and not feel like everything I've worked for has been for naught. And then I can get some severance. This is beautiful. I said, if that's what you want, that's not what I was planning on right now. But if that's what's going to work for you, and we got that done, we got him to a point where his wife had just started a business and it was blossoming, and they were not being able to spend time together because they both had this, and now he could go help her with her business and he could feel good about it. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. But in the meantime, outside of that kind of thing, when you know that somebody is in a role that is hurting them, they're never going to be successful. They're not going to get any farther than they are, and they're hurting other people. It's not so much that you are hurting somebody, you're actually helping them to see, with the CISO, I was like, when you're ready, I will recommend you to these different places. I will tell them where your strengths are, how you can do things. We did that with everybody. When you know that you are never going to be successful here, it feels like, for me, I'm hurting you more by keeping you here, by being afraid to have the hard conversations with you. I hurt you more than if we just have the hard conversation and you understand this may not be your role. That doesn't have anything to do with you. It means that this role is not the right role for you, and you would be more successful somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you're able to have those conversations and keep them in the conversation. If they don't check out, they actually have the conversation with you.
It's amazing how, if they, and I think that's the big thing, if they think that you're having the conversation because you care about them and you want them to be successful, then they tend to not check out as much as if they just feel like you are a boss who is culling the team. They feel very different than if you are a person that knows their kid's name, or knows how hard they've tried this, or knows that they're studying for this particular certification, and you come and talk to them about those things, and you continue to talk about both the positive and the opportunities for growth. They don't feel like you're just coming down and just trying to get rid of them. You are actually trying to help them. In my experience, they will stay involved in the conversation.
Yeah, that's so good.
People want to feel heard. I mean, that's huge, important.
It's really important for people to feel heard and valued, even while you're delivering the message that they're not the right person for this particular role as you conceive it. That's a particular skill, Christina, that I know you've developed and honed over time. It's not for the faint-hearted to be able to have those conversations, right?
It is not. When people tell me, hey, I want to get into leadership, I try to say, when you're talking about that, when going from leading technology to leading people, there's a lot of uncomfortableness that you just have to be able to lean into. It is not a comfortable role.
It's not. And some people think of the benefits of being in leadership, and they don't think about how much the welfare of your team weighs on you, how responsible you feel for making sure they're accountable and they know their accountabilities, that you're giving them good feedback, that you have them in roles where they can succeed.
Yes.
Because it impacts not only them, but the whole team. So staying hyper aware of that while you're also building the brand of the organization externally, and while you're navigating the relationships with your peers internally, it's quite the deal, right?
It is tough. And a lot of people believe, particularly in technology, which is where I have my background, that means success, that becoming a people leader means you've become successful. Where in reality, there are so many different roads to success and being very good at what you do that a lot of times our culture doesn't emphasize as much. Being an engineer who's very, very good at being an engineer doesn't get nearly the same amount of prestige as like the SVP. But you need as many, if not more, of those engineers who are very good than you do the SVPs. And so it's just very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about. I love this complex world, right? I love hearing about how you're navigating it. I love working with our clients on navigating their own situations. One of the things that you've done so well is navigated the timing of your departures from organizations, and because what's easy, and what I've heard a lot, and kids coming out of school, they tell me, we've been advised to jump from job to job every 2 years because that's how you get the most growth. And what they don't tell you when they're telling you to jump jobs is the turmoil that puts your personal life in, and if you have a family, it puts your family in. And sometimes when you jump from a pretty good situation to a not so good situation. And eventually, most of those people who I've worked with who've jumped around a bit, they eventually recognize when they find a good place where they want to stay for a while. Sometimes they wish they'd done it sooner, but eventually they get to there. You, on the other hand, have kind of navigated that differently. You haven't jumped from place to place, and you've really tried to get all of the learning possible out of your current organization, even if that meant staying in a place where you were extremely uncomfortable for a while. You recognize, if I can learn to get through this, or to manage this, or to navigate this leadership team, I will be more marketable. I will have more value. And it's not just about the marketability. It's about the ability to lead through challenges, right?
Right.
And so can you talk to us just a bit about how you know you need to stay? Like, what are the signs to you that you need to stay and get more learning and understanding? And what happens when you're ready to leave? Like, what's your sign that says, okay, time to move on?
In one of my roles where I was learning a lot still, and I knew I needed to stay, I had another leader come to me and say, I was watching the way that your boss was treating you. And, your boss talks really nicely about you when you're not there, but when you are there, he treats you really horribly. And I'm really worried that you're in a situation that is not acceptable and that we need to worry. And my first gut response wasn't, you're right, and I'm in this terrible, was, I am learning a lot from this person. Now, did I like the way he handled everything? Absolutely not. But man, did I learn. And the ability, when I get to the point where I feel like I am not learning at this point anymore, that is when I know it's time. So when I left my last organization, I had gotten to the point where I no longer felt like I could learn. And I also no longer felt like I was the best person to lead the team. The culture had changed significantly. And I was, as I tell my people, I was no longer the right person for this role. I was not going to be as successful as I wanted to be, or the team needed to have somebody be in order to keep this role moving forward and to growing. And I knew that coming to the organization that I came to, I would be much more effective and successful, and I would make a difference where I would no longer do that there. And it's not that I couldn't learn as much. It's that I really felt like the difference between my effectiveness in both places was so extreme that it didn't make sense for me to stay and cause issues over on the one team, whereas I could be really leading and growing other people and other leaders on the other team. It's looking at it from a holistic without, there's always emotions. I love this team. I don't want to leave, but I love the people. I've created this. That's great. But if I really do love them, I need to make sure that they have what they need to move on. And that at that point was not me anymore. So.
Yeah, good. Well, is there anything else, Christina, that you would like to talk about as we wrap up? Are there any other leadership philosophies or words to live by that you would like to share?
The only other thing that I would like to share is I highly, highly advocate for, as soon as you start your career, find yourself a mentor, and always have a mentor. And about halfway through your career, maybe not even that far, become a mentor. And always be working from both sides. Have somebody who's always mentoring you, because you're never going to get to the point where you know it all. Always be having somebody help you, but always be helping the next coming up.
That's great. That's great. Flow like water, right?
Yes,
Take
exactly.
it in, give it.
Yep.
So
Give it
great.
back.
Well,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending your time with us, Christina. It's been so great to be friends and colleagues and coachee mentees over the years. And we just really appreciate you being here with us today.
And I appreciate you asking, because you have helped me so much.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate a chance to learn from you as well. As I listened, 2 words kept going through my head that I think from my interactions with you define you, and that's courage and authenticity. I think it defines your leadership and your growth. And thanks for sharing some of that with us. And to our listeners, we invite you to appreciate the transformational experiences that have brought you to this point in your leadership journey. Until next time. At Peridot Circle, we facilitate the growth and transformation of individuals, leaders, and emerging leaders of fast-growing, tech-savvy organizations. If any of our listeners are interested in learning more about our approach to leadership coaching at Peridot Circle Consulting and how we can help transform how you show up at work, book a consult with us online at peridotcircleconsulting.com. We would love to help you and your organization achieve more than ever before.